There is no full mobilization in Russia right now. Intercepted phone calls prove that some people are still being mobilized. Just listen to what happens in Russian Rostov region right now.
Да, да, он там плачет, ничего, там с антеннами приехала машина, понял, там, типа, будка это злая, и все там, типа, ну, вот так. А так, ну, вот, вообще. А здесь так тем более. Пошел, он раньше меня на месяц, наверное. А там выгребли у нас селена. Люба старый звонит, говорит, ты тоже погнал? Ну, говорю, еду. Он говорит, а кого, говорит, они хотят? Уже никого не осталось, нету людей. У нас Ростовская область, вот так сидим, понял, в палатке. Человек 40. Из 40 человек 15, это одна деревня. Соседняя деревня, они друг друга знают, как родня. Кто-то там дядька, кто-то брат, кто-то сват, понял. Сидят, понял. Ну всех выгребли.
By the way, they introduced a law in Russia that forbids men to legally drive a vehicle in case he was mobilized but not visiting the enlistment office. This law now wouldn't make any sense if Russia wasn't mobilizing people. Anyway, now let's listen to the wife of a Russian soldier who really believed the TV during Wagner's attempts to take Bakhmut.
Нормально, что это, наши нормально, там ты что, по всем направлениям показывают, Вагнера показывают, что уже сжимают, уже некуда им уже все. Только они не выходили, их. Сказал этот Пригожин, что 38 тысяч этих погибло в Артемовске, украинцев. Ну а так вот рассказывают, что все хорошо пока везде. Смотрим под всем этим, и подоляк, те, кто не выступает, мы уже как в баке копейки сидим. Славик, Иркин, вот тут муж. Иркин, лаборантший муж, это врачичи нашей. Его ну то, что открыл дверь, а его забрали тогда, помнишь? А это он пришел, это на 3 дня вот отпускали, помнишь? Ну и все, то как пришел, и уже, хуй коди, это не идет. И за ним уже 3 раза проезжали, прячется. Ну пошел, ага, это не мое.
Slavic is definitely...
All right, Shalom. This is the brother Nahal, your friend GMS Orlando Camp. I want to start off by giving all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rokakodash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who are the elders of Yasher Allah, and a sincere salutation to all Yuakim, who are preaching this word and believing this word, and to the Akwath, who are believing this word, in all truth and in sincerity. Yahweh is the name of the one they ignorantly call God. Yahweh Shai is the name of the one they ignorantly call Jesus. Bahashem is in the name. Rakah is spirit. Kodash is holy. Akyam is brothers. Akwath is sisters. Shalom means peace. And Yasher Allah is Israel in the ancient Paleo-Hebrew. Now, I want to go into a lesson based on the clip that you just saw and this article. All right. And before I do, let's go here. All right. This is Revelation chapter 11 and verse 14. And it reads, the second woe is past, and behold, the third woe cometh quickly. Now, I want to go into a lesson on this through the Spirit because, again, this is an example of how quickly, all right, tables turn. All right. The Ukrainian-Russian conflict hasn't been on that long. It's been less than 3 years. All right. And they're already having a population issue. Now, we know, according to prophecy, that Babylon the Great is going to experience this, but much worse. All right. Matter of fact, I'll hold this, but I want to read some of this article first. All right. So it says Russia's catastrophic missing men problem. All right. See, when things hit the fan, these debates about gender roles, all right, the feminism, the role of a man, all of these debates can only happen in a so-called civilized society. You know, they describe it as first world problems, meaning when your survival isn't priority and you have, you know, food and a decent habitation, so to speak, which Babylon the Great is a careless city, as the scriptures describe it. They live very comfortably. So this is why you have people who are able to have podcasts debating about gender roles. All of that goes out the window during warfare. All right. And Russia's experiencing this now. Yet Babylon the Great, the Lord's going to save the worst for last, because, again, this is going to play out on this side of the earth as well. All right. So let's read it. It says, where have all the young men gone? It says, where have all the flowers gone? As famous 1960s anti-war song. In Moscow today, The New York Times reports, the question is, where have all the men gone? The answer to both questions is, in part, the same, to the graveyards of soldiers. But a lot of the missing men of Moscow have also fled Russian President Vladimir Putin's draft for his war in Ukraine. Now, understand, when this is a global war, there's going to be no place these men can run to. All right, there's not going to be a place that they can run to and just try to, because the world is going to have a conflict. Now, there are going to be certain areas that aren't like right in the middle of the hotbed of the war. Yet, it's going to be hard to find a place where you can run to, all right, when these things actually start to play out as far as the global world's woe. All right. Right now, you have a conflict in Ukraine with Russia, but this is really like a proxy war. All right. Russia is really fighting the West, but the West is using Ukrainian bodies to fight the war right now. But eventually it's going to translate. And we understand that through prophecy, that the West is going to actually have to send the men of this nation, all right, over there to fight that war as well. All right. When this world war pops off. And you have a lot of flashpoints where it can easily escalate. All right. But yet this is an example of how quickly populations change in the midst of these conflicts. Keep in mind, this is less than 3 years. All right. And this article came out May 10th. OK, so it says this. It says, but a lot of the missing men of Moscow have also fled Russian President Vladimir Putin's draft for his war in Ukraine. In fact, demographers say Russia may not recover for generations, if ever. All right, it says Putin spent years racing against Russia's demographic clock, only to order an invasion of Ukraine that's consigning his country's population to a historic decline. Bloomberg News reports. Here's a look at what demographer Alexei Raksha calls Russia's perfect storm of demographic decline. All right, it says, where have all the young men gone? Putin says his October 2022 mobilization drafted about 300,000 men to send to Ukraine. Another 300,000 Russians are believed to have fled to other countries to avoid the draft. The U.S. calculated in May 2023 that about 20,000 Russian fighters had died in Ukraine since December, and another 80,000 were injured. That's on top of tens of thousands Russian soldiers killed or wounded in the first 10 months of the war. I feel like we are a country of women now. Moscow resident Stanislava, 33, told the Times, I was searching for male friends to help me move some furniture, and I realized almost all of them had left. Now let's go here. All right, because prophecy is going to play out on this side, and these are just small examples of how easily things change. All right, this is Isaiah 32:2, and a man shall be as an hiding place from the wind. And this is talking about a man of the Lord. All right. But when you think about it, when you look at less than 3 years and they're already having a population issue, I believe their population is bigger than the U.S.'s population, but I could be wrong. All right. So if a big population like that is already having a male population problem, how quickly would it take? You can easily see. Isaiah 32:2, and a man shall be as an hiding place from the wind, and a covert from the tempest, as rivers of water in a dry place, as the shadow of a great rock in a weary land. All right. And this is talking about a man of the Lord. All right. Matter of fact, let's go to 2 Esdras 16, because what does it say about, all right, what's going to ultimately end up happening and be experienced on this side of the earth as well? OK, this is 2 Esdras chapter 16 and verse 33. The virgin shall mourn, having no bridegrooms. The women shall mourn, having no husbands. Their daughters shall mourn, having no helpers. Because when world war happens, when wars happen in general, all right, eventually you get to a point where you still need able-bodied men. And they may not be men that were enlisted in the army before the war started. But it doesn't matter at that point. They're going to need able-bodied men. This is why there was a draft in World War II and there was a draft in the Vietnam War. Because when you deal with kinetic warfare, when you deal with warfare that's physical, all right, close combat, dealing with drone strikes and all of these different things, you can pile up casualties extremely easily. And in that case, they're going to need more people. This is why, you heard those calls about the husband of a doctor being called into the war, guys hiding out to escape the draft. All of these things are going to play out on this side of the earth, too, because, again, the American population isn't as big. And it's going to hit this place like a freight train because, again, these people on this side of the earth are not used to war. All right. Over there in Europe, they've had wars fought on the soil. All right. World War II was fought on that soil. All right. The Russians had to deal with that conflict on their soil. So they're more accustomed to the warfare, the reality of warfare, as opposed to America, which is more accustomed to watching warfare from a safe distance, so to speak. All right, is Isaiah 47:1. Come down and sit in the dust, O virgin daughter of Babylon. Sit on the ground, there is no throne, O daughter of the Chaldeans. For thou shalt no more be called tender and delicate. And why is it described as a virgin? Because it's never been invaded since they were established as a nation. All right. After the whole American Revolution, all right, they've been fighting wars. All right. But it's been basically on other people's land. They haven't been invaded, especially when you deal with modern warfare. World War I wasn't fought over here. World War II wasn't fought over here. The Vietnam War wasn't fought over here. All the other wars, when you think about modern warfare, weren't fought on this land. So there's no reality of warfare. There's no imagination for the reality of warfare on this side of the earth. That's why the scriptures describe this place as the careless city. Outside of the unwalled city, all right, the world is a wilderness. And a lot of nations and countries are used to warfare, whether it's civil conflicts, civil wars, or whether they have the memory of warfare. All right. Now, this is beautiful, right? Because, again, all of these things are going to play out over here. This is just showing how everything is growing and escalating. All right. Because eventually, no matter what they say about, because, again, this is a Western, I believe this is Western media, so they could be exaggerating as far as the numbers. But even then, all right, when you just sit back and think about modern warfare and how easily it is to kill and for people to have casualties, you can easily see why they would need able-bodied men to fight in a war. And they would use anybody that they can get their hands on that is healthy and of age. All right. And again, going back to that point I made earlier, the conversations about feminism and all of those things are going to go right out the window. All right. Because they've already wrote inside the laws, all right, that they can draft women as well. And then we're going to find out who the true feminists are, so to speak. OK, I want to continue here. It says this. You know what? Let me just jump down. All right, here it is. In the remote far north of Russia and along the Mongolian border, in the regions of Sakha and Bartia, mobilization rates were up to 6 times higher than in Russia's European regions, according to Yekaterina Mourn as the Asians of Russia Foundation. Indigenous people in those regions were rounded up in their villages. And that's the calls that you're hearing in the beginning of this clip. And enlistment officers scoured the tundra and handed out summonses to anyone they met. So they need people. All right, they're at a point now where they need bodies. All right, and this is typical. This isn't strange. All right, when you think about World War I, World War II, and Vietnam, whenever you get to this point where the war is hot, you're going to lose people, and you're going to lose people very quickly. All right, now let's read this part here. It says, how has the male exodus affected Russian demography? It says Russia already had a huge gender imbalance before the Ukraine invasion, dating back to massive battlefield losses in World War II. Paul Goebel writes at Eurasia Daily Monitor. Results from the 2021 census are expected to show that Russia has 10.5 million more women than men. And what does that remind you of? Isaiah 4. All right. If you haven't read it before, read it. All right. It says Russia has 10.5 million more women than men, almost the same disparity as a decade ago. The double blow being that Russian men at prime childbearing age are dying in Ukraine or fleeing Putin's draft, which will further depress the already low birth rates in the Russian Federation and put the country's demographic future, already troubled, at even greater risk. All right, now this is a beautiful point. All right, because when you go into our history, you know, the Lord told us to be fruitful and multiply. All right, and the Lord prioritized families when you look at the law. And it was for good reason, because you still need able-bodied men. We live in an age now where it's almost discouraged to have children because, again, there's such a burden, a financial burden, that most people can't afford to have children. All right. Yet, you know, the scriptures say be fruitful and multiply. And that was for good reason. All right. When you look at this situation, you see how easily populations can diminish. All right. And I just wanted to highlight that point, going back to the law and what the Lord told us to do as a nation of people. All right, to be fruitful and multiply, because again, when you live in a comfortable society like this, all right, where there's more benefit to not have children, so to speak, than to have children, especially when you deal with these Edomites. You know, they're not reproducing faster than they're being born. Yet the Lord is mustering them up, all right, for this battle. Because again, these men over here in Babylon the Great are going to go over there. And the American military is already having trouble recruiting. All right. And this is already in a point where you have men, all right, who used to enlist into the army just to get benefits. And they're now choosing not to do so. All right. So it's showing you very easily how things can escalate. All right. So I want to highlight this, you know, as a matter of fact, let's go here. Joel chapter 3 and verse 9 reads, proclaim ye this among the Gentiles, prepare war, wake up the mighty men, let all the men of war draw near, let them come up. Beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, I am strong. Assemble yourselves and come, all ye heathen, and gather yourselves together round about. Thither cause thy mighty ones to come down, O Lord. All right, so the Lord is mustering this battle ultimately. All right, assembling and gathering these people to the valley of Yahweh Shaphat, all right, which is over there in the Levant region. All right. And this is just one example I just want to point out to show how demographics change easily when you deal with warfare. And this is why a man's going to be more precious than fine gold in that day. All right. This is, again, I'm going to read this one more time. This is 2 Esdras 16 and 33. The virgin shall mourn, having no bridegrooms. The women shall mourn, having no husbands. Their daughters shall mourn, having no helpers. In the war shall their bridegrooms be destroyed, and their husbands shall perish of famine. So Lord willing, this was edifying. With that, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakodash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who are the elders of Yasher Allah, and a sincere salutation to all you Akim, who are preaching this word and believing this word, and to the Akwath, who are believing this word in all truth and in sincerity. Shalom.